I'll check your thing. Yeah, because if it's in your contacts as Greg, then that's why it's going to be that way.
6 o'clock.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our Monday, April 24th, 2023 Cascade City Council meeting, and we would have a call to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Kelton.
Here.
Roush.
Here.
Hush.
Here.
Delaney.
Here.
Oliphant. Here.
I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Kelchen.
Second.
Second by Oliphant. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 5, speakers from the floor. You have a limit of 2 minutes to speak on anything that is not on the present agenda. And number 1 is Steve Stahl speaking on the youth practice field.
Hi, Steve Stahl here. Let me start out by saying I'm not against this practice field. I think it's going to be a nice place for the kids to play, and as long as it stays to its original true intent, okay? And I'm going to go through quickly here, and if I'd like to maybe get a little clarification at the end, because both the park board and the city council approved this practice field as with no structures, as a practice field, and that the park board, or the youth board were going to take care of the maintenance for it. But on Monday night at our meeting at the berm that we had with the citizens from down that area, I met with a few of the board members here and from the park board and some leaders of the youth league. Anyway, we expressed our concerns about maintaining the integrity of the berm because it was put there to protect our houses, our property, our businesses, and our families, okay, from flooding. And so we were more concerned about that than anything. At this meeting, we were told that this field would only be for practice and there would be no need for parking there because it was just going to be a drop and stop, go down, drop the kids off, come back, pick the kids up. And we were also told that the only structure that would be on this were bases at that meeting. Is that right, Andy?
Yep.
All right. It was also brought up about the possibility of people driving on the berm, which we don't want to have happen because it will, start to degrade the integrity of that berm. Basically, everybody that was there agreed that that should not happen and would not happen.
Correct, yeah, and there's a sign, it's
Okay.
signed
Yep,
currently.
Perfect. All right. So anyway, I've got 3 concerns about this. As I had heard some things, so I went back and I watched the park board meeting. And at that meeting, one of the youth leaders for it stated that they might want to put a backstop up down there at some point in time. And again, then just a little bit later, after park board member Darren Monanak had called in on Zoom or whatever he was on, he said, and let me find out, he said, is this designated to be just for practice? And I believe, Lisa, you said correct. It's in the video if anyone wants to watch them. And after this exchange, there was another one of the leaders, youth leaders that could be heard saying that maybe their Tuesday league games might play there also. And then the third part is that before this meeting, there was a city worker that had observed a person driving up on top of the berm and parking on the berm. And he was somebody that was a part of this whole deal of getting it going. So I just felt concerned that we had one of those people that was driving up on the berm and then he was telling us that it wasn't going to happen. And also, so I guess what I'm here is just to clarify so that, because when I was starting to do this, one of the first guys I talked to has been down there a long time in that area. He says, he said the thing is that things like this happen in town. We get something that's put out there for this specific purpose, and then they want to start changing what the intent and purposes of that was at the original start. And so that's with, being stated that maybe you guys are going to play some league games down there. Maybe you want to put a backstop up down there. Is that something that you guys are going to say no, because of what we did, that's not going to happen?
The Corps is kind of dictating what we can
Right.
do.
Yeah.
So I had to apply to the Corps and to the DNR, which it's called a joint permit when you're gonna do anything. And the only permission that we were given was to do nothing to change any elevations or put structures there. So regardless of what the Youth League wants to do, or what we think would be fabulous, even if people here wanted to change it, it can't happen without their
Yeah,
approval.
that-
And there's no reason why they would approve it.
Okay.
The other thing about your story about someone driving on the berm, Loris told me that same story. So I went to the employee who was out there, and that story is not true.
I went to the employee too, and he told me it happened.
You talked to Greg?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what happened is that someone drove by the Yardway side of it, and Greg was on the far other side, and Greg just waved them off. They were not on, because what I was told was the person said, no, I'm not leaving here, and I can park wherever I want. Like, these stories get embellished, as we all know. That's
I
just
know,
kind
that's
of.
why when I heard it, I went. You know,
Right.
And they didn't tell me who it was.
Well, he didn't know who it was because he was that far away. And people do pull in to the Yardway site and kind of have the ability where the end of the berm is to be able to look in there.
And I'm wrong, but I mean, I did talk to Greg, and he told me that that is what had happened when I talked to him.
So it's not like, I just don't want people to think like there's someone recklessly driving up on the berm.
But, you know, there again, I did check with Greg, and that's what he told me. So whether or not, I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, but anyway, and I guess I would just like to make sure that if somebody does drive on the berm, I know I mentioned that to Steve several times that night down there, you know, that we do have the police cite them for driving on the berm.
Well, again, we'll defer that to the police, but I explained to Loris, like, Loris has cameras. So I said, it's not gonna do any good to call us later, like, you have to let us know as soon as you can. If you text me, if, you know, it's in the evening, most likely, it'll be Brad on duty. If we don't have somebody, maybe they can come out. You know, we're not gonna dictate that they cite them, they may get a warning, you know, and what I think we've explained to the youth group is that they need to make sure that their people understand this is a privilege to be able to have this. It's an honor that the council and the youth league are willing to do it, and so we don't wreck our privileges. So make sure you park at the silo site, have your kids walk around. Please don't, you know, be disruptive to that area. Don't be disrespectful to the berm. And I've never, you know, I don't think people do it now, and hopefully they understand that. But if it's seen, we need like real information. So if that's a license plate, and then we'll pass it on. You know, we're not gonna necessarily, like I said, we're not gonna require them, like it's always officer discretion. But we're gonna, obviously, our goal is to change behavior if someone does something wrong,
Yeah.
more than just punishment.
Yeah. So
So,
we just, you know, for us that live down there, that, you know, does protect us, and so we're
Right.
very
but for,
cautious
but
of it.
please know that it's just as important to us as city officials that our city's not flooding. And so
Yes, I know.
there's nothing, even though it's your specific property, like it's gonna be, everybody's gonna be
Yeah.
here if something like that happens.
Oh, I
And
know,
so we care just as much, even though we may not live there.
and the big flood that we had, I mean, the whole community kicked in, and I mean, we just, it was just totally nuts and amazing that the support we had, and the support from all the surrounding communities that came in
Right.
and helped do that. But I was just here just to,
Mhm.
just after I started looking at that, you know, I just wanted to express that concern to you guys, so.
You know, and again, like, I think when you talked about the games, like, I don't think we ever said, like, it has to be practice or it has to be games, but you're never gonna have, like, a serious amount of games when you don't have backstops and you don't have outfield fences and they're not measured and things like that. So if it was the smallest of kids who their games might as well be called practice, because I had two boys that played baseball and t-ball, and it wasn't anything crazy, and their balls aren't gonna go in the water. So, you know, there could be some flexibility with them, but it doesn't change what's happening on that site
Okay.
in terms of like the physical, like the backstop. I don't think the DNR would ever allow that, so that wouldn't happen. But
Yeah,
a T-ball, I don't know, do we start at 5 or 4?
4-year-old.
Right, so, you know, for them to have a game, if we called it a game, isn't really any different than practice. So if it's technically their game schedule that was maybe down there just to be able to allow that, but it's still not gonna be,
I believe the 4 and 5-year-old is actually called the game, but it's their practice, like, that's all it is.
They
It's
just do this
They're
one.
all out there kind of playing together, so.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
those are just concerns I had about the words that were spoken and what I had heard, so.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, as I said, when this all came up, you know, I was gone, but what I know is there was no ill intent, like, all the elected officials are just trying to make it better for the kids, and not try to be disruptive to the neighborhood, and also be respectful of the laws and protecting our flooded areas and use space that really can't be used for anything
Yeah,
else. And
and-
so it was never meant to be,
And like
Right.
I said
And I-
that night, this is just a Band-Aid to get by. They came to us days after the library had presented and the library project was going. They
Hey,
had
can we
grand
do this?
plans, and we had to kind of push them off. We can't handle multiple projects, so this was kind of a Band-Aid to help us get by, give us somewhere else to practice, play them little T-ball games, just to keep going.
Oh,
There
no,
was
I
no, I
understand.
know there was talk that this was piggybacking off of Dyersville or doing that. This is nothing. We haven't talked to anybody up there. This is just kind of an extension of that Lincoln Field, just
Yep.
something similar to
And we
suffice.
understood that after we talked with the people that were there that night.
Yeah, I think
But-
it got ramped out of control
Well-
really fast. There was a lot
There
of
again, yeah, you know, when nobody knows what's going on for sure, you know, heard there's a ball diamond going in, whatever. And, so yeah, there's some people that got a little excited. I was there just to, see what was going on, and like I said, don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to voice these concerns that I had.
thank you.
And just to be fair to the coaches, does it make sense to pull in on the backside of the berm towards the street to unload equipment instead of carting it all the way from the silo parking area? Depending on how much you have,
Usually as coaches, you don't have a lot.
you don't have?
No, I mean,
Okay.
a bucket of balls and you can ask
Okay.
the kids to help carry it.
Yep.
Usually the kids, your team are willing to help you carry equipment.
Your stuff.
So it's not gonna be that bad.
Okay,
Perfect.
thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Should we have some type of, like, document of understanding exactly what the rules are?
I mean, we
Rather-
could do a letter to the youth league, I guess, and just,
Something so everybody knows, so that in 5
That
years.
it's spelled out.
5 years or 10 years, there's a different council, and all of a sudden, just to placate their concerns in the neighborhood.
we can.
And then during our meeting too, Nick said they were gonna send out, just communication to all the coaches, just to make sure they're aware that no parking on.
coaches and whatever parents you had on an email list, just
We were gonna contact the coaches for sure.
The coach
and
for
tell
sure.
them to
Yep.
contact
their parents, yep.
That there's no parking on the grass, no parking on the berm. You know, you have to drop off by the silo or by the.
Yardway site.
thing.
Do we need
Oh,
some
yeah,
additional
Brooks.
signage at all down there for that
Well,
purpose?
the thing, like we said, is if you sign it, it's enforceable.
Well, at first you have to change the
We'd
ordinance.
have to change an ordinance.
So we thought,
And then
like,
it's-
these guys brought it up, and then I was like, all right, I checked the ordinance to make sure our ordinance lists specific areas of no parking, which it does. So I said, why don't we just give it a shot? You guys can always address it if it's a real issue, but I don't think we should make a permanent decision. Because then that means that even when the neighbors have stuff going on, like, their people can't park there either.
Oh, yeah, good
And
point.
it's not curbed.
There's no
Right there,
curbing,
So it's like a very thin street.
you know, so you can do it, but we thought, just from these two that were at the meeting, they thought, let's see what happens.
See how it goes.
And one of the things that came up too is like, if it does get bad, we could just take some of those, like,
Snowplow stakes.
snowplow stakes and just put them along there every 10 feet, just to,
Oh, like how people put them on the edge of their driveway so they know where they are. Pokey sticks is what I call them. We have those in alleys for the garbage trucks.
Any other concerns? If none, we'll go to number 6, the consent agenda, minutes, city council 4/10/23, park board 4/10/23, utility board 4/12/23, and April 24th, 2023 claims. Is there any questions about any of these? Need a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent
Motion by
agenda.
Oliphant,
Second.
second by Hush, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
That's number 7, recognition of Bill McCarthy, the 2023 Outstanding Volunteer Award by the Iowa Urban Tree Council.
So Bill and
Bill.
his wife Jan are here. I think that the council knew that there was a whole
Resolution.
opportunity to nominate people for, it was obviously the outstanding volunteer work, there was outstanding employees, groups, nonprofits, things like that. And in my short time here, Bill has been tremendous in the amount of work that he does to assist the city as a volunteer. So I did nominate him without his knowledge. I did let his son know when we were trying to find out information to answer some of the questions. And thankfully, the Iowa Urban Tree Council picked Bill as one of 3 people to be recognized in the state in the volunteer category. So Ben and Bill and Jan and I went to Des Moines, I guess it was technically Ankeny, a week ago. It'll be 2 weeks on Wednesday, and there was a nice speaker who talked about things that you can do for tree health in your community, and then they honored all of the award people. So we wanted to bring Bill here and get a picture if Danny would like them with the mayor. He's got his award here, and just again, Bill, want to thank you on behalf of Cascade for all the great work that you do to help us not only to evaluate trees, to keep them cared for, to plant new ones, to help us pick those, and all the great knowledge that you bring to our public spaces. Want to be in a picture with Bill?
The people behind the scenes, my wife, my son, Lisa, everybody that supports, the right things to do for this city. It's really means a lot to me. You're able to share your talents. It's very, very important for this small town.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome. You're taking a picture too?
You too.
I guess. How are you saying? I'm trying.
He just wants to trip you, Lisa.
We need to move out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
Just gonna see where they end up.
Same thing I.
Do you want to take Jan's camera and she can come up here? Bill already said you might as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm married to a celebrity.
People behind the scenes really know where it's at. 3, 2, 1.
All right, Bill, here, all right. We're go 3, 2, 1, I'll do that too. There you go. I have a fancy
Congratulations, Bill, well deserved.
I can do that too.
Thank you.
Jan.
Thank you, guys.
Way to be a great support system, Jan. It's a lot of work.
trees than I want to know.
I had Ben in charge of getting a picture that I had to send with the nomination, and it was like it was long before April Fool's. It was in February, but she wasn't going to give it up because she thought it was like.
Because it's April Fool's, you're not getting a picture for an April Fool's joke.
She didn't know. I was like, don't say anything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
We appreciate it.
McCarthy's.
See you tomorrow. Thanks.
Number 8, open public hearing for fiscal year 2024 budget. I need a motion to this effect.
I'll make a motion to go out of regular session
Motion
into
by
public hearing.
Roush,
Second.
second by Oliphant. Roll call.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Kelchin.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing.
So, I guess we'll just kind of summarize. Obviously, there's no citizens here that haven't heard, what we've gone through with the budget. Obviously, as we know, we've kind of had a couple phases of this. Number one, just trying to get our own operations in order in terms of what we needed with various increases with insurance, various kinds of insurance, different things like that. And then, as you know, we tried to focus a little bit on having some extra funds to do what we called kind of projects. And then we sort of had our second tier of the state making changes to the assessed value, which then decreased what we would have in terms of assessable value. And then the last thing that we also talked about was that shift where we had asked for a lot less in TIF. And so we had a larger pot within the general fund and then moved that back over to TIF by being able to pay ourselves back for the deficit that was there from previously not being able to ask for the full amount. So with that said, the ad was put in the paper a couple of weeks ago so that it was legally in time. shows all the different expenses. This is on page 14 of the packet, is what the public notice would have looked like, and summarizes that our mill rate, including debt, will be $11.12 with some decimal points after that. And then, of course, the ag land is valued at the $3, which is the state levy limit on, or the rate limit on that. So we are utilizing the maximum amount for the general levy at the 810, and then we had other employee benefits, the liability insurance, and then the IPERS and FICA were the three lines that will be showing, although those don't show on the individual tax bills. So we will have the opportunity to, once, if this is adopted by the council, then to be going forward, we'll be able to kind of talk a little bit more about what we'll be able to do for some additional street work and project work. Obviously, we have the start of the library project included in here. We have the start of the Highway 136 project that will span over this fiscal year and the next, and we'll talk a little bit about some funding ideas for that when we get down to number 15 on the agenda. So I don't know if there's any questions. Obviously, the council's been going through this since early February.
Did either of you guys get any calls or anything?
Nope.
Nothing?
You didn't, did you? No. Nope. So if there's no council questions, then once we're done with the public hearing, there would be this evening an adoption, and then we have two other items related to the budget.
If there's nothing else, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by
Second.
Roush, second by Delaney. Roll call.
Hush,
Aye.
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Kelch.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Number 10, consideration of resolution number 35-23, adoption of the fiscal year 2024 budget.
So this would just be, again, adopting as it was presented, discussed at the last couple of meetings that the council had as a whole to go over that. It was legally published in time. We have until April 30th to legally submit it to the state, which will then give us the rest of the week to get it to finalized on the online portal, which Kathy has a vast majority of that all ready to go.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 35-23.
Motion by Delaney,
Second.
second by Oliphant. Roll call.
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Kelch.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Number 11, consideration of resolution number 37-23, creation of summer 2023 GIS intern position.
So I think most of you know what a GIS system is, but it's really different layers of information that relate to things like our utilities, our streets. And we've created the system and invested a lot of time into creating the layers. What we haven't invested a lot of time in is getting the data. So for example, you do a complete GPS location on where a water main is, what size is it? And Kathy can even attest, we've had a couple people that have already come in just in the last couple of months saying like, hey, I'm looking at this property, I want to add a garage, I need to know like where does the service come in from, things like that, or do we have services? So what we know when we have such long-term employees, especially like Marty, who's worked in the utilities a lot, so much of our knowledge is really within Marty and him as a person and not translated into the computer. So we talked about how can we best utilize someone to help us this summer. There was conversation about whether GIS and maybe like hire someone to mow the lawn, things like that. But we really felt like bringing someone in, like a college student who can best utilize the system and like go along with Marty or go along with Phil or somebody like that to be able to say, all right, this is where it is. And then that person will have training to be able to create the locate on the map. And then it just gets directly inputted into that. And so we really think that before people don't have enough time before they eventually retire, it's really best to do that. And so personnel discussed this quite a while ago and was supportive of that. We didn't really bring it back to the council until we knew, obviously there's not a lot of people in a summer position. It doesn't really matter where they go to school, it kind of matters where they live. And so this person that is coming in to interview tomorrow, if you approve, is from Epworth. So they're willing to come for their summer job. And so we think that would be a good use. There may be times where someone like Marty isn't around and can't necessarily go out with them. So we kind of left it up to, does it make sense to have that person then not working, or are there other ways that we can, it's just easier to find a person if it's a full-time job with someone at that age. So he said, you know, like we got that paint grant. So if we need the bathroom doors painted, like there's things that they can do as kind of fill-in work. to be able to make sure that we afford them a 40-hour position. So we'll do as much as we can with GIS, and if there are some down days, or say like when they're seal coating, you know, there may not be as much time, so we may want to give them some work then, but that's usually not till August anyway. So if the council is willing to approve the recommendation from personnel, we would proceed with that interview tomorrow, and if we have a good, like I've talked to him already once and had a meeting with he and his professor, and one of the professors at NICC is who recommended the gentleman, so.
What is his major, or what is his?
He's actually interested specifically in gas utilities, so he's looking at a major in that area. So he's not specifically in the GIS program, but he understands the system. And then in my memo, I explained that we have, you know, he's used the system before, it's just not his actual expertise. We couldn't find anyone specific to that program. But we pay for, in our, what's the contract with Schneider, we get 20 hours a year is just given to us under this program. You can't go less than that. And we have like, I don't know if I put how many hours, but it was like 15 hours left. So some of those hours that we have is who will actually train him online first. So we're comfortable with that he's in the utility world. And then we also talked to Chantel that maybe because he's interested in gas more than any other utility, that maybe, again, if there's some downtime, that we would give him an opportunity to spend a little time with the gas and electric crew, just to be able to have some field experience there.
How much do we already have, like, in the GIS system?
So water and sewer are really weak, and more on gas and electric is strong.
Gotcha.
So I think that they've invested, just been able to afford it probably more, that their layers are more populated. And I think, like, when Chris worked on their side for a while, right, before he came to the city side, and then Matt are probably have been the most knowledgeable in the past. And just, you know, like in the winter time, they have less work, whereas we have different work in the winter, but if it's a snowy winter, like, we don't have as much time as they do, like, they're not plowing and things like that. So water and electric and storm sewer are weak.
Do they think they will be able to get through everything?
No,
No?
not in one summer. But we'll just do the best that we can.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
I think it'll be.
It's an important feature that we need to keep
Plugging away.
Yeah, because especially with us going with everything underground, electrical and everything, we need to be able to cite those, and that is the best way, is to be able to pull that up and say,
I saw a presentation on it, it just pinpoints everything.
oh, yeah, it's fantastic. And it'll be a great, and I mean, it already, in some ways, is for the guys already a fantastic
Yep.
tool, and it'll be even better for them now.
Right. If anybody uses like Beacon, it's the same company. Like if you ever look at Beacon on like Dubuque County, it's
That's-
called Schneider. So when you think about like how much information we as a city use on Beacon compared to the olden days where like, what did you even do to get like values and lots and, you know, like just where everything is, it's just really that same kind of system, but more internal to us. So I think it'll be helpful, and it's a pretty, you know, like if it works out and we can maybe find someone every summer for a couple summers, but let's at least see what we can accomplish. And we'll charge it to water and sewer.
If there's no other concerns, I need a motion on the GIS intern position.
I'll make a motion to approve GIS.
Motion by Delaney,
Second.
second by Kelchin. All roll call.
Oliphant?
Aye.
Kelchin?
Aye.
Roush?
Aye.
Hush?
Aye.
Delaney?
Aye.
Number 12, consideration of resolution number 36-23, fiscal year 2024, wages and salaries.
Again, this is a recommendation out of the Personnel Committee that we discussed a couple of months ago. This is the numbers that are budgeted within the budget. Mainly 4% cost of living. Wanted to get it done now, just as we're talking about the budget, in addition to the fact that like Kathy's 6 months is here, so we need to vote on that anyway, so it just made sense to just have one resolution. So the only exception would be Kathy, and then myself via my contract, and then Brad, the Personnel Committee, was recommending an extra 2% in January. So these would be, and then like the part-time officers, I think Lee, is at the highest, and then based on some of the seniority that they have, I think Chief has them at slightly different amounts, so we put the max there.
The one I would like to see adjusted would be the local access director, probably the maybe 16, considering what she does.
I would say maybe we should take that back to personnel first. I don't know.
I mean, she's very dedicated in what she does, And I think that that would be more than warranted to bump that to maybe 16.
Do you want to have a personnel
I'm
meeting?
fine with the personnel committee meeting, yeah.
I'd like
Yep,
that
that's
as a
fine.
personal.
I mean,
'Cause I-
something to just kind of keep in mind, a lot of your fast food are starting out at $15 an hour.
Right.
I mean, the base wage anymore has changed a lot the past 2 or 3 years especially.
Especially on the Illinois side. I think Mike, though, as our person that kind of helped create a lot of the public access system, we've talked about a couple changes on just some of the work. We started meeting with Mike about that, so instead of just adjusting it, maybe, Mike, what do you think if we kind of talk about the duties along with if we're going to review the wages? I think that would be wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
So why don't we have like a modified personnel committee meeting? I
With
can step
Mike.
out and put Mike in it if
That'd
you
be
want.
fine.
yeah, because because we'd had meetings about public access and kind of an idea for the future of where the public access goes and how we can expand it, how we can make it more broad and do more stuff in there. And that's going to require more entail into that. So I think, yeah, sitting down and kind of going over what that whole thing is going to encompass and then reevaluate what the wage is going to be there.
It's probably
I
more
think-
of a job description change.
So
Yeah.
I'm fine if you guys want to do that, put Mike
Yeah,
in my
'cause,
spot,
I
so
mean-
it'd be a
Just do
committee.
these
and-
three. then.
From where she was before to where she's going and this whole, that whole position is going, is going to be a whole different encompass. So, I mean, evaluate the wages.
So we can always come back before July 1, so I would say let's keep it on here as is, and then Mayor, Megan, and
Yep.
Mike, we can meet.
If there's nothing else, I need a motion on resolution number 36-23.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution
Motion by
3623.
Kelchen.
Second.
Second by Roush. Roll call.
Kelchen.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Number 13, consideration of ordinance number 05-23, EMS ambulance fees. This is the first of 3 readings.
So as you know, we discussed this back at budget time, then we've discussed it at the last meeting, and this kind of relates to an agenda item also later, but this would be the first of the readings. So these are the recommended amounts. You'll recall that the increases are based somewhat on Medicare and Medicaid maximum, so that we're capturing what we are able to, and the vast majority of our people their bills are being paid by Medicare. There's not as many private pays. And then remember, the big change is not having resident or non-resident, so that's why everything's deleted in the non-resident column. And then I also put number 7, because I thought it was important to get that in the ordinance, is that all fees are considered a bundled rate. So when we previously had individual, like oxygen things and different, a syringe or a medication or things like that are all itemized on the bill. So the bump is somewhat deceptive when there's a bigger gap between the bump, that you won't have any of those individual things. We don't have to worry about the items being captured by volunteer EMTs who need to get back to work and may not write their report for 24 hours. So I think this is more efficient. So this would be the first of the 3 readings if the council is agreeable.
Is there any questions about this?
One thing I had, it's not really a question, it's more, I guess, for future. I don't know how often Medicare or Medicaid changes their fee schedules, but is it worth adding in something to our thing where
To make adjustments?
we're automatically,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's something that they could build into the system.
Let me, before we do second and third, let me get back to LifeQuest and just see how that works, like to make sure that it actually matches and then that the next thing can match,
Just thinking, trying to save time down the
Right.
road, like,
not get missed.
yeah,
Okay, let me ask them.
perfect, thank you.
If there's anything else?
No, I was just,
If there's nothing else, I need a motion on ordinance number 05-23.
I'll make a motion for ordinance 05-23.
Motion
Second.
by Rouse, second by Kelchen. Roll call.
Roush.
Aye.
Hush.
Aye.
Delaney.
Aye.
Oliphant.
Aye.
Kelchen.
Aye.
Number 14, consideration of resolution number 38-23, park board appointment.
So as I indicated, Mike Sconza resigned. He only has the remainder of this calendar year to fill his term. We had advertised back in the paper as our legal requirement for any boards, and we had said that there was one. At that time, Sharon McLeese was the only one who turned in a letter of interest, and that was back when we filled Brad Buffelli's term that was ending, so she was appointed for a full 5 years. Then Mike resigned, and we didn't have anyone else on the list. So we did more of a social media campaign. We received 2 letters, one from Mark Modernock and one from Sammy Simon. It's the council's appointment, but the mayor is recommending Mark. And then I just kind of put the ordinance there, so it's up for whatever you guys want to do. I included in the packet the resolution and then kind of the Facebook post and the 2 letters that we received.
I did receive a couple of phone calls from sitting members of the park board, and they would really like to see Sammy Simon on the board. I have kids that are her kids' age, and I think would be a fantastic member of the park board. She's very active in the community currently. Her kids are very active in the community, and I think she would be really great on the board, personally.
I also received calls. Pretty much stating the same thing.
As I.
Any other thoughts?
So just add when you do your motion, since the resolution is blank, just make sure that you put the name of whoever, if you want to go one way or the other.
I need a motion then on resolution number 38-23 on the park board appointment and with the name of the appointee.
I'll make a motion on resolution 38-23, appointing Sammy Simon.
I'll second.
Motion by Oliphant, second by Roush. Roll call?
Hush,
I'm,
Delaney,
Aye.
Oliphant,
Aye.
Kelchin.
Aye.
Roush.
Aye.
Number 15, discussion on future urban renewal plan amendment. Number 1, staff salary and benefits charge 15%. Buchanan Street Sewer for Iowa Main Street Investment Group. Highway 136 construction project and downtown building improvements.
So before we engage Dorsey and Whitney, who is our TIF attorneys, I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. So obviously, we spend some money on attorneys when we do this. So the first item we've talked about as a part of the budget, and I feel like the council's kind of given your direction that we're good with proceeding with that. What they would suggest doing, I had a meeting with them right before I went on vacation, that basically you would put a maximum per year, and then we'll put an escalator in it, so you can do 3 to 5 years. So you still allocate it within your individual budget. It's still an annual allocation, or how we certify the debt that Kathy submits to the state after council approves it. So it's not a set amount, but you put a max, and then we would review it again in 3 or 5 years. And so I think that's wise. So the amount that we have in there, like for this year, at the 15% for the 2 of us is $29,000. So they suggested that maybe we do like 50 just to give yourself a cushion and then do a slight escalator for those 3 to 5 years. So I want to make sure that I don't want them to be drafting paperwork and spending money if we don't agree that that's what we want to consider. So is everyone good with that? Any concerns about that? Okay. The next one we talked about last time, where we gave direction that we would pay for the 2 manholes for the sewer, for the backside, remember, of the old brewery building, that they needed to have the elevation coming from the south side of the building instead of the north. And then I also spoke about, if we're going to make an amendment for this, that we should also make sure that we're not changing anything about the parking around there. So Brian Bach is gonna make sure that he has direction one way or another about that. And so before we would do that, we would discuss that as well. Is everybody good with that? Probably the newest thing that we have not discussed is when I had my meeting with them, I talked about street work. And you would never want to just put general street work within your TIF district. Like, you're not gonna just say like, hey, up in Oak Hill, even though we are creating tax base because of residential, we really don't spend it on residential, which obviously 95% of our streets are residential areas. But they did talk about that what's appropriate, if we feel like that's what the council's direction that you want to go, is that main corridors that you can justify bring people into town are the areas with which we have businesses can be charged there. Again, it's an individual year's decision. But if we had capacity within the TIF prior to doing other projects, if we add this to the project list, which remember we already have the library on there, And when we do the debt for Highway 136 and the library, it's going to be debt that we do together. We'll take it out, remember, coming up sometime in this next year. We can add that to that. So if we have capacity, we would be able to lower the debt service levy if there's capacity in there. And so there's no harm to add it in there, minus the cost of us amending the plan, which I wouldn't suggest amending the plan if that's the only thing that we were doing. But they definitely thought that it was appropriate because of the main corridor that it is. And remember, it's like a $2.2 million project. Around 800,000 of it is coming from the city. We have about 150,000 left from the, oh my gosh, ARPA money. I was gonna say COVID, ARPA money. And then my hope is that when we come from the RPA Group 9 board meeting in Dubuque County, that I'm hoping we can get a $100,000 contribution. So my hope is that we're spending around $500, $550 towards that debt that we borrow. So I think it's something we should consider, because I think that it would be a way to try and keep that within a certain pot. And it may be that we take part of it, like, I don't know what the debt will for sure be on that amount yet, but we could always take some of it from the TIF and some of it from the general debt levy. But as long as we're amending it, they felt like that was an appropriate use. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm all for it.
Anyone opposed?
No, no.
Mike, you're good with that?
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll proceed with that. Then, if you remember, when I first came, there was some conversation prior to my arrival where people would be directed to come and let us know after they did a project, and that was kind of what happened with like Cascade Lumber. And then remember Eastern Iowa Excavating, where we sort of like had them making their improvements. And then when we did that urban renewal amendment last fall, we kind of added them after the fact. So Ross Orr sort of falls into that category. So he came to me and was like, hey, like, I'm done with my building improvements, and so now it's time to apply for TIF. Not really in the right order, but we understand, and I at least respect that that's definitely what he was told, and I see emails that, you know, show that. It's not like he's late to the game. So because that property is already in the TIF, we're not capturing the growth. So, you know, like because his building was at like $25,000 around in value, and now it's like $95,000. So if that property was not already in the TIF area, we would not be able to capture the growth, but we are capturing the growth. And so we're not hurting ourselves by doing this a little bit later than we probably should have. So because it's not like a huge, you know, like some of when we decide what percent it would be, and how much we're going to give them of the increment, we look at like job creation. So like a industrial customer creating lots of livable wages is different than a part-time store open 3-4 days a week and maybe one person being there. So I proposed something to him at like 60%, which is a little bit more of kind of like what we did with Randy Vasky, and maybe for 5 to 7 years, which we're talking, you know, something under $20,000. It's not a lot of money, but he, in good faith, thought that he would be able to come here and ask for it. So again, wouldn't want that small of a project to be something that we did on its own. But if we're doing this, is anyone opposed to having some increment for them? Everybody's good? Okay. And then the last thing is the hotel building. That is now not clear for sure what they want to renovate right here that McAllister's purchased. We're looking into some grant funding. The Catalyst grant that we've taken advantage of at $100,000 a pop, you know, we're now like ranking #1 in the community that's gotten the most of those. You know, recall we had the B&L construction application that's in right now being considered. So, and it's a much bigger project in terms of the dollars. There was discussion with the state about CDBG funding. They have like downtown revitalization if you can show blight to the building. So I am looking into that. But I do think that maybe this would be an appropriate use of TIF as well, depending on what they, and I know they're kind of up in the air. I know they just posted this weekend like, hey, what do people think we should do with the building? So as long as we're going through this process again, I don't know if you want to consider, you know, they, minus the one facade grant, there has not been any TIF assistance to the buildings that they've previously renovated. And this is going to be by far their biggest. You know, there's 3 full floors. So, thoughts on that?
I'd be fine with looking into that. It might assist in getting it
Back
more
to-
user-friendly than what it would be, because I know there was talk, and I had seen it of elevators, and, I mean, we looked at an elevator and it made our head spin, so. it Help
Yeah.
with
They're
something
not
of
cheap.
making it accessible for multiple floors.
Mhm.
Yeah, because they said the library's gonna be, what,
150,
150,000?
yeah, it was expensive.
That was a lot.
Well, that was if we added the basement too, but yeah.
Yeah.
The basement itself, here obviously you have the, is there a basement? Or is it just the main three?
What is there, Steve?
There's the basement.
Yeah, there's a basement.
So it's really 4 floors.
Are the top 3 floors just apartments now?
I don't know what they were.
It's gutted right now.
It's all.
The third is completely open, the second is getting there, and the first, I think, is still as is. I don't think they've done anything yet.
Right.
And there was some conversation about apartments, Airbnb, commercial, like combination
Because
of
that
different.
innovation lab is in the,
Yes,
and I think that stays, doesn't it?
not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I think that they'll let them as long as,
They don't have
till they
something
know.
else. Or, yeah, I didn't.
Okay, well, we'll start some conversation and start running some numbers, and then my plan would probably be, give it a little bit of time, and then maybe we'd start talking about this in June to get it done throughout the summer, because it takes about 90 days, if that's all right.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if there'll be a letter of engagement, but then maybe we can just have a motion to direct staff to get moving on these projects, if that's all right with the council.
Do you need that right now, or?
Sure.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Motion by Oliphant,
Second.
second by Delaney, all in favor?
Aye.
Number 16, discussion on EMT compensation.
So I think, Megan, you were the one that first said when we talked about raising the fees, kind of what our options are. So I provided you, I wanted to make sure that we were legal, just because every state's a little bit different on how we reimburse volunteers. So if you had an opportunity to read that, there's really just some criteria, making sure that we're not paying people so much, which I don't think our proposal was anyway, where you're getting into a fair labor standards issue where you're paying them more than what you should as a volunteer, but not enough to be qualifying them as a full-time employee or fully compensated. So they kind of talked about like 20% over the prevailing wage for the position if it was full-time. I also, never really understood, because I'm just not involved with that side since I've been here, but we have that volunteer compensation line item in the budget. So I did speak to Mike Donovan, about how that $12,000 works. So we cut a check to the ambulance service for $12,000. That's on our budget line item called volunteer compensation. And then this is what has happened, at least in the last year. You can see on page 53 what happens with that. So they've basically used that towards officer compensation, but I'm not totally clear on the different line items. Like there's something for their officers, and then I don't know what the rest of it is. It wasn't really made clear to me. But that's the 7 people that get compensated something. And then that leaves 4 to 5 people that are either drivers or EMTs that actually get nothing. So I think, first of all, we really don't know how much more money we're gonna get. And so there's nothing wrong with saying like, we allocated the 12,000, let's be consistent with that. Probably makes sense for us to ask them to give us something in writing as to how they actually calculate this, like we do this for your officer, it's a set amount. And then I don't know if some of this is like per call for those officers or how it works, but maybe we get that, continue the 12,000, and then like in the last quarter of this coming fiscal year, see where our revenues are at based on what we budgeted, and then we can have a conversation. Because I'd hate to see us make the decision and then not have it be revenues that's actually, because I'm sure there's a delay. Like when you look at how long some of those collections take, it may be only a small portion of next year, and then really we won't have a full fiscal year. Even if you adopt the fees in the third ordinance, they could put them into effect June 1st. But I think when you're billing on June 1st, you're maybe not getting that money until well into fiscal '24. So I think this at least gives us what our legal abilities are. I think it's a good idea if we get that extra money to be able to spend it there. But I would just suggest that we get more information from EMS and wait until we kind of see how the revenues are shifting, if that's okay with the council.
I'm fine with that. Sounds good idea.
Everybody's good with that?
Are we getting real close to having a problem finding enough people to staff?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's been a problem for a while.
I had a ambulance member want to reach out to me and talk to me about it. They wanted to have an ambulance meeting. I think I'm still on the committee. I have been in past years. But I know they wanted to.
That was
have a-
recent.
Yeah, within like last week, and I was able to experience the shortage last week, and it's bad.
It's gonna get worse.
Yeah.
You know, and it may help these kinds of things, but there also can be a reality in small communities where you may have to look at other sources of how we service it.
Correct.
Obviously, that's not anybody's goal, but you also have to think of reality.
It was a topic of discussion when we were in need of it. How quick could the others respond? So.
Right.
How does like Monticello do it? Like they have full-time EMS.
Are they city
Dyersville
people?
does too, right?
You know, that's an interesting thing. I was talking to somebody just recently that Monticello actually has a waiting list.
But are they volunteers or are they paid?
They're paid because
Paid.
Coletta works full-time.
Yeah, so if you
And
pay
Monticello.
people, you're not gonna have a waiting, or you will have a waiting list
Yeah.
because they're being
Yeah,
able
she
to
works
pay.
how many on and how many off.
Yeah, they're basically paid service, their ambulance area there, they have, I think when she goes over there, they have a facility, she can stay, shower, eat, there's a kitchen, everything right there for them. They have one person that stays right in town, they just go right back to their house after a call. But they're paid so much per call, I believe, and then so much for being on call. So if they have a 24-hour shift, they're paid from the time they get there until the time they leave. I think she is on, if I remember right, she's on 24, off 24, and on 24, and that's her week. So,
I can find out, I have no idea. I mean, if they just fund it that way because they have, and they've kind of worked it into their budget, or
yeah, I
what
think
they
they,
do.
I think, as long as I've been here, I think they've had a paid service, they've always had it staffed. And when they put up their new EMS police building, it was just, yeah, we're gonna put these facilities in there for them so they can stay. They don't have to leave. But, yeah, I'm not sure how much, as far as pay, what they get compensated or anything like that. But
I can
it's
certainly
basically
ask.
24/7, so.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you. That might be something to look into. See, just curiosity.
Yep, I can ask.
Anything else?
We'll bring that back up
Gotcha.
mid to late year next year.
Number 17, and this was added, discussion on bagging recyclables or garbage in Republic toters.
So I was talking to a farmer on the east side of town that gets pretty disgruntled about the amount of trash that ends up in his field. And I mean, we live in Oak Hill, and it is bad. Especially last Thursday was horrific with the wind. It was bad in town, and it was worse out in Oak Hill. Like, there were pizza boxes and everything out in the yards. So I'm kind of wondering, I think other communities do this where they have bags. You have to bag your garbage in before you put it in the toter. So you're not putting just loose trash in the
You're talking
toters.
garbage or
Or the
recycling?
Both.
Both.
Where you have to put it in a giant bag. And I believe, it might be Monticello, don't quote me on that one, but where like Republic would sell the bags, I don't know if, what it costs or anything like that, but I think it's something definitely to look into, just because, I mean, we just had Earth Day last week, and the high school kids were out, and the amount of garbage that was collected was unbelievable. Like, and it's great that we have that volunteer program, but that's one day a year. And I mean, I think we pride ourselves on how beautiful our city is. I think we need to really look into this.
So I talked to Republic. Garbage, you should have in bags. So that's just whether you use the white kitchen bags or the big black bags or however people do it, that should be in garbage. And that's usually, like, that has more weight to it, so that's typically not as much of a problem. The problem with recycling is that we take our stuff to Ditmer's, and they will not take garbage if it's in plastic bags.
Recycle.
Sorry, recycling. They will not take recyclables if it's in plastic bags. And so it will, like, the reality is if we do that, I don't know how we solve the problem because it's a problem. But if we use plastic bags and we ask people, like, even on the east side to do that, they will landfill our recyclables. So that's not good. They did say that they would let you put them in paper yard waste bags, which are uber expensive, and I don't see how that's practical. Then I talked to Matt a little bit, Matt Pivot, about, like, is there other things that we can do? And he said, really, the biggest thing is that people, you know, we talked about why is it so much more? It's like the whole Amazon, people having things shipped to them, bigger boxes. So anytime that you have, and this is assuming it's the toters, not once it gets flipped into the can or into the truck, but anything that's like over 3/4 full sort of creates the problem of the wind that pushes the toter top up, and then you get more air into there, and things like milk jugs and stuff are what flips up. And then it's some of that top loading truck stuff that, like, it's already up in the air, and then if it's individual pieces flowing down. So I just don't know what to do, because I feel like if we said do the plastic and then people know that their recycling is landfill, that's not gonna go over well either.
No, I agree. And I don't know what the answer is here, because it, like last Thursday when it was so windy, when I drove through my street, the toters were on their sides.
Right, and it is definitely an Oak Hill East End problem because of your height. Like, that doesn't happen in our neighborhood. Like, we don't have toters flipped over.
But there were toters flipped over on Main Street last Thursday.
We had a big gust go through and it really knocked
Agreed.
things around.
Yeah, but like that's,
I think it's common, though, up by you guys.
oh, for sure.
Yeah,
It's way worse of a problem out by us. I totally agree. But it was, I mean, if it's happening on Main Street across from like the elementary school,
Right.
like, there was garbage in the street, like, or not garbage, but recycling all over the
Right.
street.
I don't know what to say.
I strategically pack my recycling bin.
Yeah,
I
of
save
course you do.
I save a big box for the end and put it upside down,
And wedge it in.
wedged in.
I kind of do that too. Like, I
Chuck's
tip
not
it
happy with
over
me,
so
I'm
it's
sure,
sort of
but-
like tucked in there. And then it kind of makes you think, like, we all kind of agreed, like, we shouldn't go to weekly recycling, but they'd be a lot emptier if they were weekly. But it's not mainly not the whole city's
No, it's,
problem.
No, it's us.
You East Siders, which all three of you live up there.
I do feel bad for like this farmer, because I mean, this year he was like, we actually only spent 6 hours this year cleaning it up this spring. And I'm like, that's still 6 hours is a lot of time to be out there picking up other people's recycling and garbage.
I know.
I'd be frustrated too if I were him.
You know, and I mean, we certainly could try to even do like a mailer up on Oak Hill and say, you know, we can't recycle with plastic bags, but we would encourage you to take your larger, like, boxes and stuff to the dumpster, you know, in the middle of town, and maybe we say something kind of like what you do, Andy, like, really think about how you pack, because Matt said, you know, when you used to be able to recycle glass, we'd tell people, like, keep a separate glass container, and then right before you put your recycling toter out, like, throw your glass on top, because it weights it all down. But now we can't do glass, so.
I think a
So
mailer
we
is a
should
good idea.
maybe do an education thing up
Yeah.
there.
start, yeah.
Something.
And we can do social media to everybody, but say especially because you're up on the hill, we're really trying to help your neighborhood stay clean, and here's some ideas that we have. Would that make sense? And kind of like a newsletter? Think about, like, because most people, it's not gonna kill you to maybe just make sure you don't put out too much. You're just asking for it to flip.
I'm always like, Andy, I have to strategically pack mine.
Yeah.
I turn mine in. I know they're probably not happy with the way I turn mine sometimes, but I try to put it in the wind.
Yeah.
Because I live right on a corner and it shoots
It'll,
right.
it'll catch
You're
them.
on that curve, right?
I'm right on that curve. Shoots right between Jason and I's house.
And I can
I
maybe
also-
talk to Matt, you know, Pivot, about just see what the ideas, and maybe they'd even be willing to help with the mailer or something.
Well, and I guess I also encourage people to, like, and we could maybe put this out on the social media or the educational pieces, but like, if you do have a lot that week, maybe talk to your neighbor that maybe doesn't, you know? And Cascade's a great place to live, and people are friendly, just work with each other, I guess.
Right. When I had a big family, if my single person neighbor, I'd be like, can I throw you know, like,
Yeah,
because who cares if it's full,
right,
Somebody's
everybody's paying
is
the same
empty.
regardless, so.
right? And we could also encourage, like, what did we say, was it $3 more to get a second toter?
Right.
Wasn't a lot, so maybe we could also say, like, if you are a larger family who has a lot of recycling, think about having 2 toters for your busy weeks instead of one overpacked, ready to flip over at any
Making
minute.
sure everybody knows that they have the option would be a
Yeah.
good idea.
The hard part is then having the space for a third toter too.
That's what he said, people don't want it in their house space.
Need a third car garage.
Right, but we can remind people about the dumpster
Yep.
and say like, you know, if your boxes are what are, because even some of the boxes, like it's hard to fold them down to stay lower than the, you know, because you have kind of those wonky innards where unless it's in the middle, you can't get it all the way down to the bottom, so.
Gotcha.
All right, so we'll work on a mailer.
Thank you.
While we're on that topic too, so I walk Industrial Park Drive a lot too.
Mhm.
And I think people literally just empty all the trash up their car on the side of the road.
Seriously?
Like there are piles.
On
of-
Industrial Street?
Yeah, like empty, like there'll be a pile of empty cans, like.
Is it kids?
Couldn't believe the amount of beer cans out on Gary Allen Road. It was
Especially right
awful.
where you hit the town,
Yes.
where you right coming in town, you look off to the right there,
Yeah.
there is literally piles of them. I mean, I'm like, I
Really?
looked over, the light caught it one day off the sun, and I'm like, whoa, what is that? It was a lot of them.
People throw stuff out on Jack Oak too, like empty beer cans, pop cans.
Yeah, I've seen those on walks.
No comprehension of why people do
Now that the mayor's on fixed income, he'll be out there tomorrow morning.
Picking up little cans. That's where they're getting rid of the evidence.
Mayor, yes. Mayor duty.
There's a way to supplement your income.
Hand picker.
Steve.
Oh, good. If there's nothing else, we'll go to reports. Police chief?
Actually, I do have something.
That's a good one.
It'll be short, I'll be short. Just kind of a reminder, we're still having a lot of scams in the area. Just this last Friday, thank goodness one of the clerks from Casey's recognized an older gentleman went in and bought $300 worth of gift cards, Google cards, and when he called me, I went up there right away. The gentleman was on the phone with the person. So we were able to get that stopped, but here to find out, he had purchased 600 from Dollar General, had been in Dubuque the day before and spent $2,000 in gift cards and sent those out. And in the depth of our conversation, he asked what he was going to do with the $9,000 in cash he had in the car. So I followed him to the bank and we put that back. A few weeks ago, we had a similar thing with a big publisher clearinghouse. We actually had Dubuque County Criminal Investigation Division get a hold of us. A couple from town here had sent $8,000. It got sent to the wrong address, so it got sent back to the FedEx warehouse. It got flagged as drug money. They'll eventually get that $8,000 back. The guy called them from Publisher Clearinghouse and said, you know, we didn't get that, send us out another $8,000, so they sent the $8,000. Unfortunately, that went to the correct address, so we didn't get that back. But the $45,000 that they had, we were able to get back after that. So these scams are going on there. I just want to remind people, if the government calls you or Publisher Clearinghouse, you've won a big prize. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. These agencies are not going to ask for gift cards. They're not going to ask for cash to be put out in the mail or to be sent out like that. If you ever get a call like that, 99.9% sure it is going to be a scam.
I had a 2-week period. I won 3 Mercedes Benzes.
Did you really? And they were all red, weren't they?
Well, I could pick my color.
Okay, yeah.
So one of the other growing trends too that goes in this, I've actually moved to a point of where I literally tell anybody, I don't care who calls you on the phone, you do not pay for anything.
No.
Nothing over the phone. Do not pay or give a dime, especially gift cards. They're asking for credit cards, anything like that. It's a surefire thing. Here's another one that's huge right now. I've had several people fall victim to this. You get a text, email, might be your grandson, your nephew, your cousin. They're so-and-so, they need help. Could you send them some money? That type of thing. A lot of people
And they're
are
good
getting-
at it.
They're very good at it. And do not do that. Call their parents, talk to them face-to-face over a phone that you know it's their voice, you can see them. Do not just blankly send money to anybody. And I know a lot of people get threatening emails too, that, you know, they have this on you, or they have that on you, or they're going to make you look bad some way or another.
We got one here, remember, I just sent you last week, it's like
99.9%
ransom.
of the time,
Same.
it's always going to be fake stuff, so just.
Which one?
Don't pay. That is the number one thing, remember, don't pay.
They also spoof email addresses too.
Yes,
I get ones
email
that-
addresses,
that
phone
are
numbers.
from
Oh, yeah.
Stephen Epper. All the
So-
yeah.
so
And when
there-
I got one from Steve Napper, I thought, Steve Napper doesn't email, so this is a scam.
This is impossible.
That should throw a
Right?
red flag up real
There,
quick.
there are some scams where they
That's
will
exactly
call
what it
you. So if you ever get somebody who calls you and says, hey, I'm with so-and-so, I'm trying to verify your cell phone number, and then they said they're going to send you a code, don't ever do that, because what they're doing is they're using another source to, you're giving them the code access to say they are your phone number, and then they literally steal your phone number. That's what they do. So, yeah, be
It
very,
can even
very-
happen on like Facebook Messenger, like
Yeah.
people say
Yeah.
like, yes, I'll buy your thing on Marketplace, and it's like suddenly not a real
Just
person.
remember,
It's
do
very
not,
weird.
unless you're seeing them, you know who you called them intentionally, do not pay. Never pay.
Well, and we had one when Brad started, I think you got called on it also. It was a couple years ago. The person had gone to Dollar General and needed Best Buy cards because it was the Geek Squad from Best Buy.
Right.
Calling, they noticed an issue with her computer. When she went back up for the second set of cards, because she had scratched off all the information and sent that out already, the clerk was actually talking to her or the person was on the phone with her. Brad and I went up there, and when we were talking to her, she happened to be standing out in the parking lot on her phone, and she was trying to talk to us, told the guy, hey, I'm on my way back to my house, and he told her, no, you're still in the Dollar General parking lot, I can see you. And when we went back to her house, she flipped up her computer screen, Brad and I were standing behind her, and when it flipped up, yeah, he was watching her, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, I see Brad and I in uniform, so we stepped off the screen. We ended up finally convinced her and had her call
They
Mike
can
and
look
say-
very, very, very real,
Yeah.
and they do. And once they get those cards, that's the biggest thing too, is once they get those cards, there
It's
is
gone.
nothing. Once they have those numbers, there's nothing you're gonna do. You're not getting it
It's
back.
theirs.
It's going to another country, somewhere else, 99% of the time, it is not, you're not gonna ever see it.
Yeah. So just
don't
as a,
pay.
yeah, just as a reminder, please don't fall into this. And yeah, same thing, we had, about the same time we were calling Brad, or training Brad again, we had a couple from town here, their grandson had gotten into trouble, and they actually had a courier come to the house and pick up $14,000 in cash.
Yep.
And Jones County had two of them at the same time. One was for 19 and the other one was for about $12,000.
They'll do a personal pickup?
Yeah,
Yes,
the
they will.
couriers, and
Really?
that time we actually had Dubuque County helping us out, Jones County was helping us out. We had DCI from the state, and Homeland Security got involved in it, and they actually picked up a courier down in St. Louis. They were shipping all the money to a cartel down in Mexico.
Really?
And that's as close as we got to him. As far as I know, the guy's still sitting in jail and hasn't ratted anybody else out. So,
Oh, no, they're bold.
I mean, it was, and yeah, I mean, at that time, they said, I think it was a 2 or 3 month time period that the state of Iowa, to that particular scam, had lost close to $250,000.
So,
just their
and,
citizens.
and to be fair, sometimes in these big, I mean, sometimes you hit the ball of thread is huge. Like, the guy who shows up at your door, he may have been just a local business guy that got offered this job to do this
To
courier
do
thing,
the
and has no idea that he is actually
Part of it.
Participating.
Committing a part of a crime.
part of a crime, and then the next thing you know, it goes through. So sometimes, it's somebody else thinking it's legit, and they're getting taken for as well, and then nobody's getting the money.
Yeah, they're being scammed to go do this job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
They
mean,
get stuck holding the bag sometimes.
face to face, know who you're calling, know who you're talking to, do not pay otherwise. Believe me, if it's the government, they'll
You don't
find a way
call.
to really get a hold of you.
Well, they don't call,
Yes,
never,
they-
ever.
They never.
Certified letter.
The IRS doesn't call, nobody calls.
You'll get official notices and stuff.
They're good at it.
They're very good at it.
I do have another question for you. I noticed there's been some posts going around about in front of the elementary school.
Mhm.
Have have the signs been helping, or?
This last week, for some reason, I don't know, because it was so windy, I think the one day I stopped and picked the signs up 4 or 5 times because of the wind. The last few days, they haven't been putting them out. I noticed this morning they weren't out. So, yeah, they seem to be slowing people down.
They've got driven over a time or two.
They have been, yeah, and I actually saw somebody do it one day. They pulled up where I was sitting, looked at me, and they were looking at traffic this way and looked this way, and they made it short and knocked it right down, so I went out and picked it up. And it's like, yeah, you just weren't paying attention to where you were going. You were watching out for traffic and watching me, so.
Oh, I'd be so embarrassed. Oh,
Yeah.
I could totally
Yeah.
see myself doing that too.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Library Design Committee.
So I have not attended the last 2 meetings, but I had a Zoom meeting today with FEH. So we will be meeting this coming Friday, kind of getting down into some of the nitty-gritty. We're going to try to focus the big group for like the first 30 minutes of our meetings for any decisions, and then we have a smaller group that will make some of the, like color schemes and things like that, so that it's not so monotonous for some of you that have to get back to work.
Megan did a great job picking out
Toilets.
fixtures last meeting.
Oh my
Toilets.
gosh, I was like, this is why I do not want to be part of that committee. This is terrible.
Well, I said to them, we're gonna make the agenda so that like this is when the other stuff is done. And then the small group is now in pick out stuff mode. So the intent is, I think the next meeting of the council, I believe, is when we will be back to talk about the design stuff and have approval again. With the goal of bidding it out in September still, approving, I think it's the second September meeting, again, assuming the council continues to approve. The second meeting in September is when we would award the bids. And then we don't really have any, they talked about, like, was there a way we could do like a groundbreaking if something else is going on in the park, but we don't really have any things in October, and I feel like there's enough excitement about the library that we'll just have a groundbreaking, so that will be planned for October. And really, there's no major structural changes with anything that we have to report. It's just really kind of making sure, like, if we have a key system, like that we connect it to the current key system. If we have any consistent things with lights and, plumbing, stuff like that, what do we want to have? Do we want to have automatic flushes or push the flusher? And what kind of light fixtures and all that kind of stuff. So kind of getting down into the nitty-gritty. Then if the council approves that, then it would be preparing for bid documents, and then I'll have some more work in late May and early June to start meeting with contractors who may be willing to do in-kind donations. And remember that we want to make sure that they are listed in the bid document so that people know people to use, people that are willing to make in-kind donations and decrease the amount of the bid, whether that's plumbing, heating, excavating, concrete, IT work, whatever it is. And we will have a fundraising meeting on Wednesday of this week and kind of talked about, so one of the things that we have to factor into the dollars that we raise is we're going to be at about $1 million that the foundation will have. None of our grant funding or obviously our city funding, county funding, none of that will go through the foundation. So it's about $50,000 that the foundation will end up keeping. And so we'll have that. So we're kind of targeting right now that we will still have a goal of raising about $100,000 more dollars is what we want to, there's definitely still people that have not donated yet. So we're at that, that's kind of what we're going to discuss with the fundraising committee is $100,000, that we're at about 97%. I also confirmed with the CAT grant people, when we got the CAT grant for the pool, everybody ceased fundraising because they felt like any dollar that we brought in was a dollar that we would lose. And so I had a phone conference again a week ago Wednesday, previous Wednesday, so 2 weeks ago coming up, to just kind of go through with the CAT grant staff that as long as we're spending the money that we're bringing in, we're not stopping fundraising and then having less of an expense so that they become a bigger percent. Mm-hmm. So I've also asked FEH to make sure if there's any lists of things that like we aren't going to have. So we talked about like maybe there's a 3D printer that we want and we don't have that. Or if there's extra cameras that we want. And then I also have them doing a calculation because we have 2,000 square feet in our library worth of shelving. And what is the space that we need? Like now, we won't have to have like jam-packed shelves like they are right now, but there's still gonna be capacity to add material to the library. And so if that's part of fundraising, I would hate to not have people giving because they think that they're gonna lose CAT grant money. So I've asked FEH, like, what are the things, like solar panels are an option, for example. So we'll have a list of things that, like, if people are continuing to give, that's what we'll spend money on, not give up grant money. So, any questions on that? Otherwise, I think they'll be here in May again. All right.
Anything non-library?
Yes, well, this is, I guess, sort of library. So SIPCO, remember, was the one, like, we had to kind of scrap that there was going to be 2 loans that we could get for 0% interest. The SIPCO one, I don't know what happened, but their committee meeting was today and their board meeting is tomorrow. So either tomorrow or Wednesday, late tomorrow or Wednesday, I should know if we're approved for the 0% interest loan for $250,000. So hopefully we'll get that. I don't remember who I sent this to, but we also were approved for $5,000 in the Ripple grant, which was the one that we were eligible because the phone company had generously given to the project. So we were able, that came from Arion, the internet provider, so we received a $5,000 grant for that. And then the DRA grant is coming up in May, and I'll apply for that, which is also $50,000. So I'll be submitting that. I need to get this is still library, I guess the asbestos removal, I need to do that. Remember, we got the report back, there was asbestos in those 2 houses and in the little garage. So I'm gonna get some bid documents together for people to give us a price on removing all the asbestos, so then the next step would be house removal. We close May 1st on the eastern house and May 25th on the western house. So my goal would be probably like late May, early June, we do the asbestos removal and then be able to take the houses down sometime in June, so they're kind of gone for the summer. We also have the soil boring results back, which then tells the contractor who's going to remove the houses, how they have to compact the foundation area so that it's solid for the development.
Because it was not good clay, is what I
Correct.
heard.
Yes.
That's what they said at our meeting, right,
Yeah.
Riley?
Yep.
The downtown assessment report, I believe you all got in an email. I don't know if everybody wants, it's kind of a longer, like 35 pages, so if people wanted a printed copy, I could get that to you. But I would like to talk a little bit about that at the next meeting, since we shouldn't probably have too much other stuff on there. Just kind of to go through some of the things. Remember, some of it is on our side. I did put a few extra $1,000 within the budget for legal expenses if we are going to start pursuing some of the legal stuff, but we obviously want, hopefully, to have cooperation. I also applied for a grant that would be sort of a piggyback to this downtown assessment. And it is, again, bringing people in to kind of help with, like, what else can we do? And so they're talking about what team they could put together, but I've talked about more architectural work where someone could help us, like, what do some of these dilapidated buildings, like, what could someone do to that and be a little bit more serious and deliberate about the plans. Also talked about how if you looked at that, they talked about, like, kind of like 2 entrance pillars, for lack of a better word, at the, like, this intersection and then by the bridge, saying, like, you're coming into downtown Cascade. Maybe designing some things like that, helping with funding and programs like that. And so they're talking about, this isn't a money grant, but it's a bring more people in from the state that have talents, that they pay those people out of the grant money. We don't actually get grant money. So there was talk about the library, but I feel like we don't need that for the library. Like, that's not something that we need people. So hopefully we can continue the momentum, which is why, or maybe ideas on, like, cooperation from landlords of buildings, things like that. So that's why I'd like to, at the next meeting, talk a little bit more about that assessment.
Something I thought of too, you mentioned like grants and stuff like that. When we did Heart and Soul, do you guys remember the Hometown Pride program? That
Which
was
is like
supposed to
phase 2.
start after. So I don't know if there's anything we can,
And that was through ECA, right?
correct. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything we can utilize their help for.
Okay.
I believe a lot of,
That was Dan Fox, right?
yeah, a lot of what Dan said is figuring out funding, grants, like different things like that on the back end
Right.
to actually make it possible.
And I think, again, like all these connections that you have, so like the team of 4 that came here from the state, like that Liesel, she's overseeing the program where she had suggested like the dog park. So I had emailed her last week saying, I know they're waiting for the budget to be adopted for July 1 to see what kind of funding they have in that program. And that was one, like that's kind of the park board's priority is a dog park out near somewhere by the sewer plant, old sewer plant. So if we can get funding for that, it's a max of 20,000, I think. But again, you just have that connection where she's already aware of Cascade, and I think all those things benefit us. But yes, I will ask about hometown prep.
Thank you.
In regard to the downtown assessment, I know the one presenter talked about the sign out here, the one panel was ripping away.
Yep.
Now there's 2 of them.
Yep.
Can we,
So we're so the CDC received DRA grant funding.
I guess I'm just talking about the immediate
Well, there's,
remove, I mean, at least the panels off it or something, just
Yeah,
to,
well,
if we can,
I can ask the guys if they can just go take the whole thing down, but we're about ready to order the sign, so.
okay. And the other thing is the DOT sign that blew over, broke.
On the
Out
way
there.
down
I think they're
South.
all over the state, so I can
I
email.
think,
That's been.
I just
for a while.
know, going to the Des Moines airport a month or so ago, there's one that's been down on the, on the Beltway of Des Moines.
That's
It's been
what I'm
down
saying,
over a
like-
year, and whatever, I wonder if we shouldn't at least contact DOT and find out. what's
Where's the
going
one that you're talking about here?
on. Just,
It's on the on-ramp for the one out here.
It's,
No.
Or, and there's one
It's
so
out,
when you're
Scott.
coming east,
yeah.
actually 2.
There's one on the on,
Yeah, there's one right out here.
And there's one right on the on-ramp.
well, this one is just west of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to a
yeah,
town
like
of South.
you're coming
Yeah.
east, it's right
So you're
before
coming
you
from
take
Monty?
the turn for Old
It's
Wood.
by the limestone sign.
Yep, by the limestone cascade sign.
It's basically just those breakaway deals in the wind, and I don't know why the one down Des Moines has been.
Well, when I drove, it's like they're everywhere.
Monty's got
Yes.
one right by their first exit too. I know.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They're just snapped off.
Well,
I'll
at least get on their list,
Yeah.
because I can't imagine Des Moines putting up with
Yeah.
signs for a year.
I waited 3 years one time in Illinois, in Geneseo. I was like, for real? Like, what is your, oh, we'll get to it. I'm like, it was like twisted side. It wasn't even tipped over. It was just twisted, like you couldn't read it. It was one of the directional signs. But we will ask. But the CDC and the Chamber have each approved paying for the 2 signs. The DRA grant that the EDC got, we hired a designer, and there's a committee of myself, Haley Roush, and Nick Callahan. So that's Chamber, EDC, and the city. We're working on designing what the sign will look like. And then we're also talking about getting new banners for downtown so that it'll have like, you know, pretty simple. When you're driving 70 miles an hour, you can't read 16 things on a sign. You're just kind of like, hey, it's Cascade, get off. So we have the bridge incorporated, kind of a blue and yellow, not exactly like the school colors, but that theme, and then like have the banners look like that. And try to have any kind of wayfinding signage. So that's sort of what she's designing, and then you get a brand kit, which has like, what's your font, what's your colors, so that anything that we order can be focused that way. So we're working on that. But I'll see what they can do about that sign. What else? Lifeguard training got done. I think we had, was it 19 lifeguards, and now we've had like 3 other people interested. So they had their lifeguard training class yesterday with Taylor, our trainer, so that went well. I think everybody knows that KCRG is coming. So we're going to have on June 1st, Riley and the mayor will represent the elected officials. It'll be an 8 a.m. meeting where we basically are just going to go through with 8 people kind of what their plans would be that they would go throughout that week that they'll be here right before Hometown Days. So we have people from Hometown Days, Rockin' on the River, the Chamber, the EDC, City, some retailers, kind of that group. So everybody's well represented, and then they'll give us kind of what happens next, businesses making commercials, things like that. So we'll get our kind of marching orders. The gazebo, I think we're getting close to some improvements with the guys being able to do some of the work. Thankfully, Public Works has done a great job. You'll see the pad to the south. That'll kind of give us an extra space for either a table or if people are grilling out there. It also then made sense to have a little pathway from the center sidewalk over to that pad, so they laid concrete there. They're also making sure, but they're doing a great job. The mason is supposed to be here tomorrow to put the caps on.
He delivered them yesterday.
Yep, they're there, and then I asked Bucky.
I told him we don't work on Sunday.
Oh, well, some of us do. And so then they'll be back tomorrow to do that. We're gonna fix the sidewalk, but we were waiting for that to get done. And then you'll see some benches going up in there, so they laid another piece of concrete where another bench will go. We're moving a table. The sod work is scheduled, but we just need to make sure everybody gets done with all that other stuff before the sod comes. So that should be in tip-top shape by the time we start having events this summer. And then we're also working with engineering crews on Park View. The house is up on the top of the hill, and Park Ridge, which is that south of 8th, where like 8th and 9th will go through from the lumber yard. So we'll be having meetings this week with Jake, myself, and Phil to kind of go through their improvements and make sure everything's up to snuff. So there should be construction in those areas this summer. I think that's it.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the betterment of the community?
I have one thing.
Good.
I know Lisa and I have talked, but when we as a council serve food at like Crime Night Out, any kind of events that the city is represented at, we talked about having like a navy polo or something with the logo of Cascade on it. Is that something that we're gonna do, or what's
Is
the deal?
everybody okay? Like, the city would probably, it'd be good for the city just to pay for the
Embroidery?
the embroidery, because we've already paid, like, I have a couple shirts, so they have us, it's only like $10 or something. So it would be, like, I prefer to get my own clothes, where we would say to everybody, okay, in the next 3 weeks, like, bring in some kind of navy polo in a material that you like. And then, so it's like, girls can have girl clothes, and guys can have guy clothes, and not try to order stuff from a catalog that you don't even know if you fit. And then we could make sure we have it for the summer. Is everybody good with that? Should we do navy?
I think maybe just with, are you gonna do like white embroidery?
Yeah, like I have a black like pullover and I put white on it. That looks good. She got navy.
I have 2 navies. and a
She
black.
had a 2 long sleeve, like quarter zips. Was yours, right? I was thinking maybe getting like a summer tank. Kind of like a golfing type tank, polo collared, but not sleeves.
Because I think about like, it'd be nice to have that for like the chamber dinner when we were there.
Or if we
like
do the ribbon cut or the groundbreaking.
Right, that kind of stuff. Just
And if it's
thinking-
chillier, you could just wear like a Under Armour type fitted under it and still wear that. It's chillier. Is everybody good with that? All right, I'll remind everyone. Just go shopping for your navy, or even if you have something that you already have, doesn't matter. And then we'll take them all together, get them embroidered.
Good.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
Good idea. Thanks for
There's
reminding.
nothing else. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Kelchin,
I'll second.
second by Delaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.